If your work involves translating into other languages when you're using Excel, have you tried the Excel translate functions? There's two of them, and there's a handy little tool that's in the review tab. We're going to have a look at those today. So let's dive in then, shall we? If you work for a company that has offices around the globe, you can find it very useful to use the translation facilities inside Excel so that you can present spreadsheets in another language or translate those from another language into your native language. So let's look at one of the first things that Excel offers in terms of translation, and that is the translate command, which appears on the review tab by default. Also has a shortcut, Alt and Shift F7. Now let's have a look at it sitting over here on the review tab. We've got the translate sitting in its own group called language, which is awesome. Now I've got this word here, which is a Dutch word, I believe. So any Dutch viewers should hopefully be able to recognize that one. So if I click the translate command, you'll see that it will detect a language, and that will hopefully be the one that's been selected. And we can see that I won't even attempt a pronunciation that translates directly to English as monthly. So that might be useful for producing a monthly report for your Dutch colleagues. Now we can see here alongside the translations I've got on the spreadsheet, we have a code. Now, these codes are the key to what Excel will use in our next section. But you can see that there is a wealth of languages, even some that aren't traditionally part of the globe, which is there in Klingon. But a word or a phrase or multiple words can be translated using this translation tool. So you can simply select a word and click the tool and it will pop up. And if you want to translate it to something else using that drop down, you can see that we have a host of other languages. So let's try and find one that might be useful. Let's look for Spanish. As we scroll down, we can see that there are so many, and there I saw it fly by. So if we choose Spanish, mensual, hopefully that's the one, the pronunciation. And you can also swap things around using these two buttons here in the middle. So the double-headed arrows. So we can choose to type in anything there, choose a different language, and so on and so on. So we can go backwards and forwards very easily. Now, note too, you can drag that box closer to where you're working, resize it to suit, and if you're happy with that, you can just dock it by dragging it to the extreme right, or when you're done, click on close. There we have it. So that is the first of the translate facilities in Excel, which is the translate command on the ribbon under review. Now let's introduce another couple of Excel's translation options, and that is some actual functions that will translate for you from one language to another. Now, if you don't know what a particular language is that you wish to translate from, we have firstly a function called detect language. So let's type that in and we'll see what that requires. So we type in equals detect. I don't think there's too many, no. And hitting tab to click in. And all that requires is some text to detect the language for. So I've got some other language words around this spreadsheet here. So I will select this one here in H5. Now it will go off and use the internet to find that language, and what it will return is the code that I referred to earlier. So this is the Excel's code for Italian, and there is a reference which I'll put the link to the full reference, but I've popped it onto this page here, and you can see the language codes that are all relating to where it will detect a language for. And that they don't follow what you might think is a country code in all instances. So there are a few different ones that are going to throw you a bit. So, for example, here, Portuguese as Brazilian or Portugal, Portuguese has two different codes. And where's another good one to talk about? And I think the Danish one threw me as well. So instead of being DK, as I might have expected, that is DA. So that code is what the detect language will return. So what I've got in this little table here is to do some translations from entering data into cell B4. And in this case, I've got the word table there. Let's do salt. Sale, yes. Sol, yeah. So that looks pretty cool. So you can see here the codes for each of these languages. Now, what's working here is I've got the translate command. Now, the translate command, if I start to type that and open bracket, now you'll see that that requires three things, one of which is the text that you wish to translate, the source language, which is another reason you might want to use detect language, and the target language that you wish to translate to. So I'll just escape out of that. And you can see the translate command in action here is to translate whatever is in B4. Notice it has the dollar sign, so that's an absolute reference, so I can copy that down. And the second part is the source language. So if we don't know it, we can look it up in a table. That's why I've got that table of language references there. But the tech language, whatever is in B4, will be the source, and apply that to our target language, which is what is in D4, and that is the Irish, in this case GA, or Italian, Japanese, Khmer, and Polish. So that's a useful way to get a whole range of different tables, for example, by just entering in a new word that you wish to translate across. In this middle table here, I have a detect and translate example as well. So that in this column G, I'm detecting the languages of these words, as we can see across, like so. And these words are unknown to me, for example, but I do know them. And this is just a simple translate. Now that is picking up the text in column H, taking the source language as what has been detected because it's potentially unknown, and I wish to translate it to English. So I know that code being EN, and note I have to place that in quotes. So that will be recognized. So simply each of those words are picking up that it's a here in German, Italian, French, and that particular one, Danish. That threw me when I first started looking at these. And there is the English translations. Now, this last little example is kind of cool in that we have, say, received something in another language. In this case, it's German. And these column headings and some of these items here and in the status as well are shown in the native language of German, including the name of this report. Now, for each of those areas there, I've produced a translate, as you can see, and those translates, and because it's in a table, you'll see it's using the referencing of each of the columns there. So table 1 headers, I won't even attempt German, I'm pretty hopeless. So it's just going to translate from the headers, each of the words within, and translating them into English, being the last part of that as the target language. Now, when it comes to these, it's again in that column M and the word Gehalt, say, Gehalt, translate whatever's in M5, detecting the language of M5 as the source and translating that to English. So that's the requirements of that referencing there. And you can see that that's just been copied down, and that will work to create a duplicate of that table in English from German. So you can see this last one here, I've done it a little bit differently again. So it is translate whatever's in L2. I know it's German now, and I want it in English. Okay. So that is a way that we can potentially produce the same report in multiple languages, and that could be across or down a spreadsheet to suit, or on different sheets for that matter. Right, so let's have a look at our next one. And we've got a few techniques at play here, which are pretty awesome as well. So up the top here, I've got a default area for my native language, shall we say, report headings. And I'm producing them over here, but we'll come back to that in a moment. What we've got here as well is a cool little way that we can produce a flag just to help our readers of our reports determine what country has been chosen. So within this table, we've got our different languages that we can choose from, a picture in cell for each of the countries that we are choosing from, and the code for each of those languages as well. And note that's also within an Excel table. Now, over here, we're doing an XLOOKUP, and based upon what has been chosen in this cell in our reports, so in M3, we're going to look up what language has been chosen and then produce the code that is also going to be chosen. So if we come over to our report where we can change the report to a different language based upon the list that we have here. I'm only doing 6 here, but of course that could be any number of. And at the moment it's a Danish choice. So if we drop down and if we choose Italian, it's now chosen based upon these report headings, which you can see are translating whatever is over here based upon the source language of English and whatever is in this language here that was chosen. That's why we have that up the top. So Italian is the chosen language, and that will then do that conversion or translation of those report headings. Now, for the flag scenario, we're using an XLOOKUP, and whatever has been chosen here in M3, so that will be the lookup value, and the lookup array, remember it's choosing a country in its native language here, so that will be looked up through this part of the table, and we will return the contents of the flag column here in column C. And if nothing is found, just as a little stopgap, we're just going to produce blanks. This is actually a data validation list so that we are constrained to what is actually in that list. So quite a neat little way to just simply from a drop down choose a particular language. Let's go with Hindi down here, and Indian flag appears. I'm sure that someone can verify this in the comments if it's not working correctly, but I have to go with what Microsoft have got as a tool. I can verify the Italian, of course, distretto uno, distretto due, vendite, spese, and profitto. And if we change that back to English, sales, expenses, and profit. All right, so a couple of techniques, just a quick review. So we've got the translate command on the review tab where you can choose a particular word or words that you wish to translate, and hopefully will be detected, and then you can choose which language you wish to translate that to. Let's go with something pretty cool. Let's go with Albanian. I hope that's correct. So that's the translate command. And then the two functions we have, which are detect language and translate, they can be used in combination. Here we have translate on its own with its three components of what we wish to translate being the text, the source language, which is the code, and the target language, which is also the code. But we can work the code up from detect language, and all detect language is requiring is the word that we wish to detect the language of. So what will be returned from that, as you can see here, is the code, which is IT in this instance for Italy. And then we had the ability to generate a nice little translation of a whole report, if we like, to produce things for all of our users in their native languages. And finally, we looked at creating a nice little model where the user themselves can choose which language to translate to based upon a list of languages that are available to translate to. And just again, that language reference with all of the codes for all of the languages that Microsoft has, I'll put a link to that in the description below, and I hope that will be of benefit to you to utilize going forward, something that might be relevant to your workplace. So I hope you enjoyed that little tour of translation options in Excel. And if you like that, please give me a like. That would be most appreciated. And I'd love to have you subscribe so you'll get to see some more of my videos exploring the wonderful world of Excel. So thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next one.